In a dire new prediction that has sent shockwaves through the financial world, former U.S. President Donald Trump has once again captured the global spotlight. This time, it's not for his political rallies or controversial statements, but for a stark warning that has left economists, investors, and everyday citizens in a state of heightened anxiety. The financial community, already on edge due to recent market volatility and global uncertainty, was rocked by Trump's latest remarks, which were delivered with his characteristic flair and sense of urgency. As news outlets scrambled to cover the story, social media platforms lit up with speculation, debate, and concern, amplifying the sense of unease that quickly spread far beyond Wall Street and into the homes and businesses of people around the world. Standing before a packed room of reporters and flashing cameras, Donald Trump issued a bold and alarming forecast. He predicted a simultaneous and catastrophic economic collapse for both Jamaica and Guyana, two nations that have recently been hailed as rising stars in the Caribbean and South American regions. According to Trump, the economic boom that has brought newfound prosperity and international attention to these countries is not only unsustainable, but is also on the brink of unraveling in spectacular fashion. He warned that the collapse would not be a slow decline, but a sudden and devastating event that could send shockwaves throughout the global financial system. Trump's words were met with a mixture of disbelief, skepticism, and genuine fear, as many in the audience struggled to process the gravity of his claims. Financial analysts immediately began dissecting his statement, while government officials in both Jamaica and Guyana rushed to issue reassurances to their citizens and international partners. Trump's dire prediction centers on what he describes as the illusion of prosperity, currently gripping Jamaica and Guyana. He argued that the rapid economic growth seen in both countries over the past few years is, in his words, a house of cards built on unsustainable debt and secret agreements that are about to implode. According to Trump, both governments have taken on massive loans from foreign lenders, including international banks and private investors, in order to fund ambitious infrastructure projects, expand their tourism industries, and, in the case of Guyana, capitalize on the recent discovery of vast offshore oil reserves. While these investments have fueled impressive GDP growth and created thousands of new jobs, Trump claims that the underlying financial arrangements are dangerously unstable. He pointed to rising national debt levels, opaque contracts with foreign corporations, and what he described as backroom deals that have not been fully disclosed to the public or international watchdogs. Trump warned that if global interest rates rise, or if commodity prices fall, both Jamaica and Guyana could find themselves unable to meet their debt obligations, triggering a cascade of defaults, currency devaluations, and social unrest. He also suggested that the true extent of the risk has been hidden from the public, with government officials and business leaders downplaying the potential consequences in order to maintain investor confidence and political stability. As Trump's words echoed across news channels and social media feeds, experts began to debate the validity of his claims, with some arguing that his assessment is overly pessimistic, while others caution that the warning should not be dismissed outright. Regardless of where the truth lies, one thing is clear. Trump's prediction has forced a global reckoning with the fragile foundations of economic growth in Jamaica and Guyana, and has raised urgent questions about the future of these nations and the broader region. At the heart of this prediction lies a warning: Guyana's rapid oil boom, which has catapulted the small South American nation into the global spotlight, may not be the blessing it appears to be. Instead, some analysts and critics argue, it could be a classic example of a debt trap in the making. The term debt trap refers to a situation where a country, lured by the promise of quick wealth and development, borrows heavily, often from powerful foreign lenders, only to find itself unable to repay those loans when economic conditions change. In Guyana's case, the discovery of vast offshore oil reserves has led to a surge of optimism, with government officials and international investors touting the country as the next big oil success story. But beneath the surface, there are growing concerns that the very resources meant to secure Guyana's future could instead become the chains that bind it to a cycle of debt and dependency. Former U.S. President Donald Trump, among others, has claimed that Guyana has taken on massive, often hidden loans from global powers that may not have the country's best interests at heart. These loans, he alleges, are secured against the promise of future oil production, meaning that if Guyana cannot meet its repayment obligations, it could lose control over its most valuable asset. The details of these financial arrangements are often shrouded in secrecy, with complex contracts and non-disclosure agreements making it difficult for the public to know exactly how much debt the country is accumulating or what the true cost of repayment will be. What is clear, however, is that Guyana's national debt has been rising steadily in recent years, fueled in part by ambitious infrastructure projects and social programs designed to capitalize on the anticipated oil windfall. International banks, private equity firms, and even state-backed lenders from countries like China have all lined up to offer financing, eager to secure a stake in Guyana's oil-driven future. But as history has shown in other resource-rich nations, easy money can come with hidden strings attached. The story of oil-fueled debt traps is not unique to Guyana. Across the globe, countries like Venezuela, Nigeria, and Angola have experienced similar cycles. A rush of foreign investment and government borrowing, followed by economic instability when oil prices fall or production targets are missed. In many cases, the result has been a crippling debt burden, social unrest, and the loss of national sovereignty over key resources. Guyana's leaders insist that they are learning from these examples, putting safeguards in place to ensure that oil revenues are managed responsibly and transparently. Yet, critics argue that the pace of borrowing and spending has outstripped the country's ability to absorb and manage such vast sums of money. They warn that without stronger oversight and a clear plan for debt repayment, Guyana could find itself repeating the mistakes of its predecessors. Trump and other skeptics point to the volatility of global oil prices as a key risk factor. Oil markets are notoriously unpredictable, subject to sudden swings driven by geopolitical tensions, technological advances, and shifts in global demand. If prices were to drop sharply, as they have many times in the past, Guyana's projected oil revenues could evaporate almost overnight. In such a scenario, the country might struggle to service its debts, leading to a default that could trigger a full-blown sovereign debt crisis. The consequences would be severe. The value of the Guyanese currency could plummet, inflation could soar, and the government might be forced to implement painful austerity measures. Ordinary citizens, who had hoped to benefit from the oil boom, could instead find themselves facing higher prices, job losses, and a shrinking economy. The newfound wealth that once promised to transform Guyana's future could be wiped out in a matter of months, leaving the country poorer and more vulnerable than before. The debate over Guyana's oil boom and its potential debt trap is far from settled. Supporters argue that with careful management, the country can avoid the pitfalls that have ensnared others, using oil revenues to invest in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. They point to new transparency laws, sovereign wealth funds, and international partnerships as evidence that Guyana is charting a different course. But the skeptics remain unconvinced, warning that the combination of rising debt, opaque financial deals, and unpredictable oil markets is a recipe for disaster. As Guyana stands at this crossroads, the choices its leaders make in the coming years will determine whether the oil boom becomes a springboard to prosperity, or a trap that ensnares future generations in a web of debt and lost opportunity. Jamaica, a nation long celebrated for its vibrant culture, stunning beaches, and warm hospitality, now stands on the precipice of an economic crisis that threatens to unravel the very fabric of its society. For decades, the island has relied heavily on foreign direct investment to fuel its growth, particularly in the tourism sector, which accounts for a significant portion of its GDP and provides employment for hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans. However, experts warn that this dependence has left Jamaica dangerously exposed to external shocks. According to leading economists, the collapse may be triggered by the sudden and dramatic withdrawal of foreign direct investment, a scenario that is becoming increasingly likely as global investors grow wary of instability in the region. The warning signs are already flashing. As global markets react to the unfolding crisis in Guyana, investor confidence across the Caribbean is rapidly eroding. International headlines scream of economic turmoil, and jittery traders on trading floors from New York to London are scrambling to minimize their exposure to Caribbean assets. The ripple effect is swift and severe. Capital that once flowed freely into Jamaica's hotels, infrastructure projects, and small businesses is now being pulled out at an alarming rate. This sudden flight of capital is not just a financial event, it is a psychological one, fueling a sense of panic among both local entrepreneurs and international investors. The Jamaican dollar begins to slide, stock prices tumble, and the government scrambles to reassure the public, but the damage is already being done. The interconnectedness of the Caribbean economies means that a crisis in one country can quickly spread to its neighbors, and Jamaica, with its heavy reliance on tourism and foreign investment, is particularly vulnerable. The consequences for Jamaica's tourism-dependent economy are dire. Once bustling hotel resorts now stand eerily deserted, their pools empty, and their lobbies silent. Airport terminals, which used to welcome thousands of visitors each day, are now quiet, with flights cancelled and travel plans abandoned. The impact on ordinary Jamaicans is immediate and devastating. Workers who once relied on steady jobs in hotels, restaurants, and tour companies find themselves suddenly unemployed, lining up for government assistance that is already stretched thin. Small business owners, from craft vendors to taxi drivers, watch helplessly as their livelihoods evaporate. The social fabric begins to fray as frustration and fear give way to anger. Protests erupt in the streets of Kingston and Montego Bay, with citizens demanding action from their leaders. The government, facing a shrinking tax base and mounting debt, struggles to maintain basic services and restore confidence. As the crisis deepens, the risk of widespread social unrest grows, threatening to destabilize not just the economy, but the very stability of Jamaican society. In the face of these challenges, Jamaica must confront difficult questions about its economic future and the true cost of its dependence on foreign capital. The combined collapse of these two regional pillars would create a domino effect, destabilizing the entire Caribbean and creating a humanitarian disaster, a scenario far worse than anyone in power is publicly admitting. To navigate this complex and ever-changing landscape of economic fear and regional instability, you need the most current information. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our essential guides and updates.